While tanking some +8s last week, I had quite a few hiccups, which resulted in my teammates dying due to my mistakes. While thankfully nobody started flaming me for them, I did feel quite embarrassed about it, and it really knocked my confidence to the point where I felt anxiety to queue up as a tank. On my journey into +10s this week, I had to deal with the anxiety affix while also trying to bounce back from last week's mistakes and do better in the dungeons where I failed last time. But first, let's talk about the vault. I had one mythic item which happened to be a shield, but not with the most ideal stats. However, I took it anyway, and this changed my crafting plan from a shield to a one-hand weapon, which I upgraded with an Ascendant Void Core. Now came the hard part of actually doing a dungeon. I sat there for quite a while in LFG, and not because I wasn't invited, but because I started making excuses why I don't want to join a certain group. For example, if someone had much higher rating than me, or if they had a note about being a 3.2k player or whatever, or had an item level requirement, and then I started making excuses about joining Myzara or Nexus Point and Skyreach where I failed last time.
Get it together!
Eventually, I got my shit together and signed up for a Magister Terras +10. For me personally, this is the easiest dungeon to tank, because I don't really need to worry much about routing, and given my situation, I wanted to start with something that would give me minimal stress. Now, I understand for many of you, 10s is a joke, and they are, to be fair, especially if you are 285 plus, but I still wanted to perform better. This dungeon went smooth like butter, mostly. We had a small bump on the first boss, where I pulled it with the worms because we had Bloodlust available, and someone pulled the trash that was in the back. But I could have prevented it if I just tanked the boss at the entrance door, but it didn't really cause any issues and the boss died quickly, so whatever.
I'm dying. Help me.
By the way, someone suggested in the comments that you can spar reflect the tank mechanic on the last boss. I tried this and it doesn't work. I press spar reflect before the cast ends and nothing happens. Spar reflect just sticks down. The next dungeon, Agathar. I opted for the big pool because I thought I'll either go big or go home. And I went home.
You blew it!
Well, not really. But unfortunately I did die because I had 5 stacks of the bleed ticking. And I tried to kite way too late, so I died, but only 2 mobs were alive, so it wasn't a big deal. But I was a bit disappointed. That was not the only mistake in this dungeon. Oh, for fuck. On top of that, someone mispulled as well. But our healer was super goated, so everyone was still alive while I raced back. On the trash before Vaximus, I didn't realize the healer popped Lust. I didn't ask for it. I thought we'll just use it for the boss, and then he ninja pulled the last pack. But as you can see from my camera angle, I was not aware, so they almost bonked him, but honestly, would have been kinda deserved. He could have just pinged it instead of pulling it, but nobody got hurt. The next dungeon was Pit, and I kinda want to paint a picture for you. This rat paladin listed this key as learning, and told us before we started he's new to the game and that he got flamed by his last group for not freedoming. People need to chill out, man. I can understand it's frustrating when you have a certain expectation of someone, or you invite a class specifically to deal with something, and if they fail to deliver, then feel free to rage about it. Just don't type it down. Simple as that. You might hear me complain here to you or on stream that the hunter didn't last, but I'm not gonna sit there typing and actually tell him or ping him for it, especially in a +10. Something you could do even if you had to escape the Alcatraz prison first blindfolded. Did he die to dumb stuff? Yes. Was his damage bad? Sure. But he was second in kicks overall. That's a good foundation right there. He's already gonna do more than people who played the game for a decade or two. He will eventually learn how to play his spec and dungeon mechanics and will be a great player if people don't scare him out of the game.
No, keep it going. Keep it going. That was so tight.
Up next, Nexus Point. This dungeon traumatized me last time, or probably the other way around. My team was probably more hurt than me, but I feel like this time I redeemed myself here. First pool, as I explained, I started in the middle, leaped to the other one, grabbed the last two and lost to nuke them down. Easy peasy, no problems with aggro, no deaths, just zug to victory. Unfortunately, couldn't avoid that pesky patrolling seer yet again, but this time he came from behind. No, not like that, clear that dirty mind of yours.
Naughty, naughty.
On the way to the second boss, I opted for just a 3-mob pool. I don't care if it's lame or less efficient, it's safe. I didn't wait for all 3 to die. I made sure the Herald was dead and then did a big pull into the next pack. Nice and easy, no aggro issues, both healer and DPS chilling. Amen. On the boss, I made sure to pick up the Dread Flail ASAP and point it away from the light so the frontal doesn't back anyone. So yeah, this dungeon went absolutely fine. The only death we had was the monk walking through the line on the first boss, but he said it was a mistake, so yeah, that was fine. Now let's talk about seat. Here is the route I created. Again, I like to make my own routes because I learn much easier than copying someone else's. And my plan was to avoid as many subjugators as possible because they hurt and people never free themselves. So I wanted to pull everything in the first room. Unfortunately, that completely failed. When I tried to pull one of those famished packs, one single dude came. The rest completely ignored me. They were like,
"We don't care."
On the next pull, I let the healer die with a successful famished pack pull, but my health dropped and I panicked and didn't pick them up quick enough, so they bonked the healer.
I hate myself.
Because I didn't pull everything in the first room, that kinda threw me off my route. But I decided to make up for the percent between boss 2 and 3 by pulling the right caster pack. And I did the left one as well, because I'm awful at math and didn't realize the last 2 destroyers would have given 4%, which would have been enough. But I'd say it's better to over percent than under. Something similar happened in my Zara, where I altered my route slightly after seeing the masks being pulled in a +20 without issues. I figured in 10s it shouldn't pose a problem either. Now, I did make a mistake in the second boss room, but I pulled the second Relentless Guardian, which was not part of my route, because it's a pain in the ass mob, and at the start of the first pull, I apparently overpulled somehow. So yeah, we ended up with quite a bit of extra percentage, so I have to pay a bit more attention next time, but it wasn't an issue. Unfortunately, I forgot to record Skyreach, which is a shame, because I never died, as I didn't chain the 2 birds and went to the right side as someone suggested in the comments. However, I ended up missing percentage because I somehow missed an entire raven from the start, but other than that, we had no issues whatsoever. In the end, all dungeons went fine. There were still some mistakes made, but nothing as bad as last time, and I'm glad I managed to overcome this anxiety that I built up last week. I almost forgot to mention, I looted this trinket from the DAOs, Bark of the Guardian Tree. I don't know about you guys, but as a tank I enjoy having one offensive and one defensive trinket that's on use. unless it's a cheat death trinket, in which case passive is fine. This trinket reminded me of the ringing ritual mod from Floodgate. It's not as powerful, but the absorb shield is pretty sweet. I know there is another one that gives versatility instead mastery, and the absorb shield is bigger, but I didn't see that one on the DAO vendor yet. But to be fair, I think this trinket is pretty decent as well. I used it a fair bit. Ideally, I'd like to get the Solar Igniter core from Skyreach, but had no luck so far. I do have Heart of the Wind on Heroic already for an offensive option, which I believe is my best in slot. I was not very lucky with the bonus rolls. I disenchanted quite a few weapons and shields unfortunately, and my cloak was still champion, so I opted to craft that as my second embellished item. Anyway, that's it for this episode. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, like the video, subscribe for more, and make sure to check out my streams on twitch.tv/SaluunTV as well. Thanks for watching. Bye bye!